I know Minnesota has calmed down. Tom Holman's come in and kind of, brought it down. But I've had people ask, well, why are they there? And I'm sitting there going, they're a sanctuary city. If they would have left them in jail or prison,
Bingo.
and when it was time for them to go, ICE would come with 2 agents, take them out, and they're gone. But now they have to find them. They're violent felons,
Yes.
rapists, murderers. They're staying with people that are illegal. Okay, that's a crime in itself. And people say they're collateral damage. Yes, but they're here illegally. Yes, they're doing everything else, not committing any crimes, but coming here illegally. It's a crime. It's their job
Absolutely.
to take you. And everybody's saying, well, you're separating the families. Well, don't you do that when you bust a drug dealer or
I got
somebody that's a crackhead?
The one held press conference.
Yeah, correct.
Went to jail. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the biggest change I'm seeing in law enforcement is the hatred. And when I was growing up, you respected law enforcement.
Absolutely.
And I think social media is good for law enforcement because it shows what good cops are doing. But this is a touchy subject that we'll eventually talk about. I think we might want to talk about in our next episode is the bad ones. Because there are some out there that shouldn't be cops.
Yes.
But I think that comes down with you're dropping your standards. You're just hiring Joe Blow. They may have, some criminal history, but hey, we'll take them anyways.
Yeah.
And then you see what happens after they get cut loose. So,
I mean,
what's your take on that between, what you saw with growing up until now?
Yeah, I'll take it back even further, guys, and tie this in because what you said is so powerful about the way that BLM in the media narrative. Because this was the same, I was a part of probably that first generation where the shift was intentional. If you guys remember 1989, F the police. I was in the 5th grade. But think about this, the seed had already been planted positively with the DARE program that even as a black kid in the inner city of Fort Lauderdale, I thought NWA was stupid from the beginning. That never made sense to me even then. Now, again, I was in the super minority, but you already saw how media was being used. And then Ice-T was a couple of years later with Cop Killer. So this was already being planted in Gen X with this whole, defiance that police are the problem. And we've just seen it escalate, of course, now dealing with social media. But when you talk about how it ties into ICE, it's the very same playbook. Demonize, dehumanize, attack, and it's no surprise that we've seen the level of assaults and death threats on ICE and DHS that we saw on police officers during the Defund the Police heights in 2020 and 2021. It's the same exact playbook. And what you were saying, Bert, about the narratives that they try, like I said, mind you being a kid, an 11-year-old growing up, and you can't any way you try to walk to the bus stop, you got to pass a crack house. If you go north, if you go south, if you go east, there's a crack house. So imagine growing up in that. And like you said, those people harbored criminals in the neighborhood. But yet we've made it today, it's a political, leftist playbook that, well, no one is illegal. So imagine using that term. Let's imagine if we use that thought process for all the drug dealers that were destroying the communities in the 80s and 90s and even today. You don't see a brigade of liberal white women putting their SUVs out in front of crack houses any place in the country to keep drug dealers from being arrested. Yeah, there's no hands off my trap house. You notice that, right? So this is the hypocrisy that we're seeing, and just like yes, go ahead.
And what you're saying is like a rejuvenation of the Black Liberation Army and all the things that went on in the 60s and 70s, and it's like bringing it back, little different, but
Yeah.
what you're saying,
Yeah,
it started to remind me of the same.
Yeah,
Yeah,
little play change up, but the ideology is still that Marxist
there. Yeah.
ideology. That's exactly what it is. They just spin it in a different way. And what I think is so powerful about what we're doing is we're sounding the alarm. We're the watchmen on the wall, because just what you pointed to, when people see what happened, and you guys know because you were both on the force, Detroit in the mid 70s, after all of the businesses collapsed and left downtown, you guys saw what happened to Detroit.
Oh yeah.
People think that is fantasy, but there's a vacuum effect after all of these militant movements. What comes next? The blight, the drugs is a devastation on a scale that people can't realize. And when you grew up in that environment like I did, you don't take that for granted. See, these activists and politicians, they won't stick around, guys, for the fallout in those communities. Notice they live behind gated communities.
Right. Well, like you were saying, like you're activists.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, back Martin Luther King. I mean, obviously it was before that, but
Yeah.
I was real young during that era.
Yes.
I'm going on 60 in a couple months. But my point with that, activists back then and during like Jim's era, they were activists for good, right? Trying to change, civil rights law and a lot of this other stuff. But it seems like these activists now are just attacking everybody because they're blaming everybody else than just owning up and trying to fix it. Instead of being part of the solution, they're the problem. Excuse me.
Absolutely. And a lot of it, we'll probably come back to this, guys, in future episodes, but a lot of the communist movement was interlined into that whole movement. There's a guy I'm going to give your listeners, it's Everett Ellison. I'm going there in a couple of weeks to work on his second documentary. His first one, and Chad Jackson is also another one who have documented. It's not by accident that literally you saw up from 1900 post end of slavery to 1949, 55, the black community is on a trajectory. 64, it has plummeted down since. We have to look at the pathology of what also happened. Single family homes, incentivizing women to marry Uncle Sam and not the father of the children. All of these were intentional things that caused an environment that police then were thrust to deal with head on. And then you guys are blamed for social problems that you had absolutely nothing to do with. And all we're seeing now is that replayed again.
And you're right. This could be a whole nother episode.
Yes, it could. It could be.
Going forward. But I want to change a little bit to one of our other have a DBA for National Center for Police Defense called Back to Badge 911. That's why we kind of paired up with you. And it's basically supporting officers that have been killed, catastrophic injury, PTSD. And that's why we, partnered with you on a lot of this, because we've been given a lot of money to these officers, and knowing what you're doing, we're going to be working with you on that. And we got an event coming up on May 22nd.
Absolutely.
But if you could give us a little idea of, because you're following it quite well on deaths this year on police officers. What are you seeing across the board with that?
Unfortunately, brothers, we're off to a very bad 2026, and sadly, Bert, for you and Jim, we predicted this when we talked at the end of last year, that all of the rhetoric was going to cause a backlash, because you guys had just lived through it for the past, decade, and especially the last 5 years. So on average, we are losing 2 officers every week, and when then you think about the fact that on average every officer leaves behind average 2.1 children, so here's that effect, that devastation that happens on multiple levels. We lost 14 in February, the shortest month of the year, and literally lost 14 officers. So it is trending sadly how we feared that it may, because we knew that some of, a lot of the rhetoric, the people that push the lies and the division, again, because they're never around for the chaos that they caused, to be held responsible. And this was our Corporal Timothy O'Connor Jr., a Pennsylvania State police officer who pulled over the car, and we're finding out now that this was an ambush. He was shot. They never even opened the door of the vehicle, and what they found posted online is a lot of pro-leftist, Antifa type garbage that this idiot was into, and this is what you guys can encounter at any time. There's no other profession I can think of that you guys have no idea what's on the end of that call that you respond to. And Corporal Timothy O'Connor Jr. is just the latest example of that.
I think the two worst calls for law enforcement, and Jim, you could probably agree with me, is traffic stops and domestics.
Yeah, it is. So, and there is some legislation out there that raises the penalty if it's an ambush. I know Bert and I talked about this over and over again. We tried to put some stuff together, but I think you've been pushing a couple of different bills, right? That
you got protect
higher
and serve.
Penalties.
Yeah, protect and serve, thin blue line.
Yeah,
there's a couple more that we're pushing up on Capitol Hill for Police Week, and a lot of the bills, I will say that we've been pushing over the past couple years. I think we got a good chance to pass some. There's a lot of good bipartisan legislation on there, so we're real happy with that. Jim, you want to talk a little bit about Back to Badge 911?
Yeah, Back to Badge 911 is our program for police officers that are killed in the line of duty or severely injured in the line of duty. At this point, we're trying to give $1,000 to the families of those officers. We've already given about $18,000. I've got 3 more that we're going to give $1,000 each. But our goal is to this year get up to $5,000 a donation, and eventually get up to $25,000. Because when an officer is killed in the line of duty, their benefits don't kick in. It may take weeks. It may take a year for them to get their families to get full benefits. So if we can help them get through that initial time, it would be great. So if we could give them $25,000, that would be a goal that we have set for ourselves, and we would like to do that. And right now we're trying to get up to $5,000 an officer that's either killed or severely injured. And at the end of the show, we'll give you an address where you can send donations to Back to Badge 911.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. And then, Henry, I mean, you're doing a great cause. I mean, you're a person that for everybody to know, that's why we're teaming up with Henry and Support Your Shields, because he is traveling on his own dime all over the United States and going to these police departments and just giving them, I believe it's a nice plaque and some other, sits there and talks to them. And, everybody, they love it. I mean, because down the road, they're forgotten. So it's nice to go and let them know. Not just, I think it has more of an impact coming from non-law enforcement.
Yes.
Right? You're non-law enforcement, but you support law enforcement.
You meet a person with the compassion for law enforcement that Henry has. And I appreciate it so much, Henry.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here was what blew me away. And like I said, we were meant to be working together, because the audience will be blown away by this. What we didn't know is that you guys had supported 8 of the same officers that I presented plaques to last year. And so remember, in our meeting last month, we were like, this has to...
Right. Holy moly.
Literally in January.
And I believe that's what brought us even closer in reference to the two organizations working together. It's like, you're putting it out there. We're helping them out, letting them know, here's people out there that support you, both law enforcement and non-law enforcement.
Yes.
I think that is really big.
Yes, because
yes, it's terrific.
Just this in the month of January, you guys knew I went to Pennsylvania for the young officer Andrew Diarte that was killed last year. And you guys, he was one of the officers that you helped that family out tremendously with the donation from Back to Badge 911. And so I literally got to talk to his chief and the city manager, literally. And then it's crazy, Bert, you call as I'm driving back to Philly. And when I said the name, you were like, wait a minute. Why do I know that name? You were like, I'm pretty sure this was an officer that we, reached out to help.
Right.
And then when we bring it forward this year, one of Georgia has been hit hard. Georgia's lost 3 officers already in the first 3 months. And Pradeep Tamang is one that you guys had already reached out to. And that event that I'm happy to announce that we know, Bert, you'll be in person, one of the panels.
Yeah, why don't you tell our listeners about it?
Yes, that is going to be standing for our officers. That is going to be in Lawrenceville, Georgia, May 22nd, outside of the Atlanta metro area. And so it's being sponsored by, of course that would happen. Bert, bring me back in on that. This is our Motown moment.
I hope you're as good as you say you are when it comes to editing.
Watch me. All right, you bring us in on that, Bert.
That's right. So we had a little bit of a glitch though, but go ahead and finish what you were saying about the event that we're going to, because I'm really excited to be there.
Yes, that is standing for police officers, and that is going to be in Lawrenceville, Georgia, May 22nd, and it was a blessing that it was moved back from this month to May, because then that allowed Bert to be there in person as a panelist.
That'll be good.
Yeah, that'll be awesome, and it's going to be an event that's sponsored by Turning Point USA Faith, TP USA Faith. I've been working with them last couple of years trying to do lunches when officers are killed, just bring lunches to that department and tell that officer's story. And so with everything that you guys were already doing with Back to Badge 911, I reached out to the state director. They're seeing what we're seeing with the numbers. It's not good. And they were like, can we, possibly do this around the country and start here outside of Metro Atlanta? So it is going to be dinner. We're inviting a lot of local law enforcement agencies and even federal, and then the panel to have some faith leaders, to have law enforcement experts, and then the extra piece is having the advocates like myself and you guys, especially what you guys are seeing on Capitol Hill. The community locally doesn't know about that. Like you said, the Thin Blue Line Act, the Protect and Serve. Most of them, outside of the importance of this podcast, they only hear what the media tells them, and we already know how unreliable that can be. So that is why May 22nd is so important. Right. And then us together working behind the scenes, guys, like we said, Officer Tamang was there outside of Gwinnett that we lost this year, and David Rose was another officer. He was officer killed from the terrorists at the Emory University. So looking forward to honoring those 2 officers that night. And of course, we'll have all the information to share here as we get closer to the date.
Yeah, as we get closer, definitely we'll put it all on social media. I think we can get the word out, get a lot of people to hopefully come out for that, because I am seeing more and more people starting to come back to supporting law enforcement, because they're seeing without law and order you have chaos.
Correct.
And you can see the areas that have chaos, and a lot of those are run by far left leadership.
Blue hellholes.
Hey, defund the police. We know defund the police doesn't work.
Correct.
We need to support law enforcement. And you can see the states that, they have crime, but they're solving them, but more and more places are safe.
Yes.
Florida is probably the biggest one.
Bingo.
I would say Texas, but there's some Texas City, San Antonio, and Austin.
Houston, Dallas, Austin.
I really didn't believe it until we started working on cases.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's crazy. So what I'm excited about is next week we're gonna have some good stuff. I think next week we're gonna find some cases that we can discuss and maybe highlight, dealing with maybe. We have shootings. We've had shootings, and the thing about videos is it's out there. And, I think for our viewers, I think next week we'll find a couple videos. I'll work with you, and we talk about them, get our perspective as law enforcement, but then your perspective as non-law enforcement. Was it good? Why should we support it? Because my biggest problem is you do the job the way you've been trained, you shouldn't have to worry about being criminally charged.
Correct.
Right? It should be justified. Just like D.A. Garza, it's his policy to take it to the grand jury.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, my whole career, Jim will say, you could indict a ham sandwich when it comes to the grand jury.
Correct.
Right? Which is wrong, but going there and just presenting certain facts, you're not lying, but you're not presenting the whole thing,
right,
and you'll get your indictment.
Right.
But one thing I don't understand in my career is how you can have a policy where we're taking everything to the grand jury. Last time I checked, you got to have a crime to take to the grand jury. So what is your crime? The grand jury is not supposed to pick the crime. They're supposed to listen to what you say. Hey, I have evidence for manslaughter. I have evidence for murder or for deadly misconduct. What are they going to the grand jury for if you're not telling them what they're charged with?
The crime was electing these ass clowns into office, guys. That was the crime. And then the community is suffering for it. Yeah, I mean, they have an ideology all day.
But the problem is
yes.
Yeah, this is the second time he got reelected. But, I blame Austin. It's getting out into the community. If you're not happy with it, then whoever's going to run against them needs to go door to door.
Yes.
You've got to tell them why.
Yes.
Right? And I think another issue is you got to have chiefs of police and your sheriff's department talking about it. I think a lot of chiefs are afraid because they're under contract. Correct. And they're going to get fired.
Correct.
Well, you know what? That's part of your job. If I'm getting fired, I'm going to the media even more. I got fired because my guys were doing their job.
Yes.
And the DA wasn't doing theirs. And I'm sorry, as a police officer, I don't work for the DA, the Commonwealth Attorney. I don't work for them.
Yes.
I work for my police department and my community to stop crime.
Yes.
I enforce the law. I go to court. I don't call up you don't call up the prosecutor and say, well, I have this. Should I charge them or not? No.
Bingo.
I shouldn't really say that because you have the discretion depending on what it is.
Yes,
but if it's definitely a violent crime, I'm locking you up.
Right. And
it's up to them to figure it out.
But Bert, what you guys are laying out, and that's why I think this podcast is going to be so important, is that a lot of people who are uninformed, and that's far too many in the general public, they wonder why their neighborhoods have turned to hell in a handbasket like they have. This is why. You've handcuffed the good guys, and then this even the worst part about it, guys, and the thing about Back to Badge 911 is you've supported families. I know 3 that you guys would look at what happened and question, why did the officer delay? Well, they're second guessing, is this going to wind me up in prison? And now that cop doesn't come home to his family because we're starting to see a lot of hesitation.
That's right.
You guys talked about the one with the claw hammer. See, that's their goal, is to get officers second guessing or, quitting en masse. Like, Jim, you talked about it. When you think about the Marxist playbook and Saul Alinsky, again, they laid it out. It's like not a mystery. Their playbook is total chaos. Yeah, so we're seeing it. Like I said, you guys deal with it on the front line.
And I'll bring something up. Jim, for you, though, when you look about
Absolutely.
Well, Henry, you're talking about hesitation. I'll give a perfect example. Jim shooting. Yeah. Jim, what would have happened if you would have hesitated?
I would have been dead.
Correct.
I mean, right? my shooting, most officers, in a face-to-face shooting, it's 7 feet, especially when they used to have revolvers. They're shooting as they're coming up. So when they get up here, they have 2 shots left. Usually they're nervous and they bang those 2 shots out. If you don't hit the guy, he kills you. Yes. And that's what happens. How many times, and departments that don't have training are wrong. If they're worried about dollars, if the city council will not pay for training, they're wrong, because your officer's going to get killed because he's not going to know how to handle that situation. Yes. And we know, Bert and I always talk about it, the 21-foot rule.
Correct.
At 21 feet, you shoot somebody. In New York City, the person was at the top of the stairs, had a scissors. He was shot with +P ammunition with a revolver 6 times, killed the officer with the scissors, and survived.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think.
I'm sorry, again, it wasn't +P. They went to +P after that shooting.
After that, yeah.
And I think that's another good episode is looking at why officers are hesitating. Is it training, or are they scared about media?
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. And I think absolutely. Our next episode we'll bring that all together. So
absolutely.
So with that, we're gonna close. I'd like to thank Henry and Jim for being on our podcast, the first one for NCPD. So everybody who's viewing, if you like what we're talking about, please follow us on our YouTube channel at NCPD-TV. Also, you can go to our website at www.nationalcenterforpolicedefense.com. You can donate from there as well. If you'd like to mail in your donation, it's 10521 Judicial Drive, Fairfax, Virginia, Suite 200. And I'd like to thank everybody. If you guys have comments, please email us at info@nationalcenterforpolicedefense.com. Hopefully you'll follow us, and we'll see you next time. God bless and be safe.
God bless you guys.